TV man, what was kind of the feedback of the podcast? Does your audience separate the difference between the idea of it versus the first episode and what it produced, or are they kind of going hand in hand?
Of just like
The
of
pod,
Rules podcast.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was pretty controversial when it came out. I mean, my first thought when like he announced that and it came out and all of that, it's like, oh man, he has to be, and they have to be extremely confident in this team. In my opinion, even with what he said about, yeah, like this, like, yeah, like, we're in a spot where we can tell the truth, we can do all that. Like, in my opinion, you don't do that if you think like 6-6, 7-5 is even on the table.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point because he does seem to be. I don't think. I mean, we said this earlier, but I don't think doing the podcast, not doing the podcast, has anything to do with leading to wins and losses, right? But I do think he's also very aware of how it'll be perceived if they don't win.
Right. Right. And I just think he knows kind of what this team is capable of and what this fall has in store for this program.
To the point, I don't think he cares.
Maybe.
I don't.
That's fair. Yeah.
And kind of just listening and then knowing his personality, I don't think he's being outcome based to project his next move or what his behavior is going to be. I think he's telling us about the process. This is about engagement. This is about the advertisement. This is about the branding. This is about meeting recruits right where they're at. I think it's a lot like his recruiting philosophy when he's on the road with top 100 prospects. I don't think he gives two cares about what the record is. I think his ideology is based on what he thinks Nebraska is and can be, not what it was in terms of its past. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm right. I'm just saying, like, I think he's just too process oriented to be detoured by the fact that they may not be 9-3. Right? I don't think that's going to dictate his behavior.
Right. That's fair.
The way he recruits hasn't. Right? The way he talks about the program hasn't. The way he feels about the state hasn't.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're talking about a guy that embraces the cornfields and the ag community and corn and tradition and mixing it with boom boxes and the latest, some new Terra X shoes or something like that. Like there's this meshing of understanding where they've been and putting it together with where he thinks they could be. I don't think it has anything to do with the outcomes.
Right. Yeah. That's fair. I don't know. For me personally, I just kind of thought that, but it also is just kind of like the media brain of like, oh man, what about the pushback if this, whatever. But like at the same time, it's like, yeah, I mean, I don't think it's ever affected him necessarily and how he's done the job.
So Tim, as we kind of moving on from the podcast part of this and getting into, I mean, we're less than a week away from the season, and obviously your perception of it was, hey, this is a guy, not just from the podcast, but sort of throughout his, he's done a lot of media in the recent weeks. It seems like this is a guy that's very confident about his football team. Whether it's talking on Sports Nightly last night about how well he thinks Dylan's doing, whether it's talking about last year, he felt like his team was kind of whiny at times and doesn't think that's the case anymore. Like, that's the comment that actually stuck out to me the most of all the like Coach Rhule stuff I consumed yesterday. Were you surprised at all that he kind of went there with last year's team versus this year's team and the mentality?
Not necessarily. I just think it's kind of like, again, it's how he gauges like progress, and it is just kind of this like, hey, how often are we getting back talk to things? How much are we getting pushback on things? How much buy-in are we getting? I think especially when you look at some of the guys they lost in the transfer portal and not necessarily to the draft, but just to graduation and moving on. Like, yeah, I do think in general, I think, and then you look at who they lost, who they added in the transfer portal. who they really kept around, who stepped up as leaders. I think in general, I mean, I think you can notice that. I mean, again, talking to this team, I think you notice like further entrenched in the culture than they were even a year ago. And I thought last year, I was like, okay, hey, yeah, this team's really starting to buy into the culture. I think it's really starting to get there. I think this year, much more so than last year, like where they're at this point in fall camp, I think it's complete buy-in, and I think it starts at the top with the coaching staff, but then it starts at the very, very top within the players, with the leaders on both sides of the ball, with Dylan, with Emmett, and the defensive side with Riley and Sierra and those guys. Like I think there's just buy-in right now.
So, t- t- Tim, how much of it do you think matters that whatever he currently says, he's pretty sure that that's not the first time whomever he's talking about has heard it, right? Like you just get the sense his level of communication. He's not selling us anything last night on Husker Sports Nightly that team was not aware of last year, or this team hasn't heard for the first time this year in terms of the comparison and his communication style. You think that's a fair assumption?
I think it's a very fair assumption. Again, and I know this for the most part. Again, I don't know. I don't think it's a thing across the team. I don't talk to everybody on the team. But for the most part, I mean, I feel like the staff is pretty straight up, pretty transparent with where guys stand and where teams stand. You know, like I mean, I feel like expectations for last year and the year before were all pretty realistic. I think they have an idea of again what this team wants to be. I think again, it's been a lot of just getting guys to buy into the long-term plan. I think not started, but I think you really started to see that come through with Riley Van Poppel's decision to redshirt. I think that it showed kind of complete buy-in in the long-term outcome and the long-term kind of growth and development of this program. So I think it's little things like that I look for, but in general, like yeah, I think there's been just generally like and Damon, this as well. Like I think there's been generally transparency with the players and the people around those players about where they stand and kind of what needs to improve for those guys to either see the field or for them to kind of see more snaps or whatever.
Tim, as you kind of, I don't know if you saw this yesterday, Avery Howard did a one-on-one with Dylan. And one of the things that he said that really stuck out to me, and kind of talking about buy-in and sort of the struggle that they're asked to go through, is how much he struggled physically with when he got onto campus and getting through workouts and things like that, and just how challenging it was last year, to get through the season as first year true freshman starting quarterback. And I actually think it's really positive that when guys go through struggles early and can come out the other end, right? Like, I think that's a really positive thing. So I guess my question would be for guys like, and I know you're a big DJ Lagway guy. I know like Archie Manning is a guy that hasn't really gone through the struggle
that
yet.
we know of.
At least on the field, right? On the field, hasn't really had the opportunity to go through the struggle yet. DJ Lagway has a lot of success early. As you're kind of evaluating guys coming out of high school, going through college, and sort of their progression, have you noticed any like tangible, even anecdotal benefit of like, hey, this guy struggled early and got through it and he ended up better on the other side?
Like maybe the fact that Trey Taylor's not racking up double-digit wins every time out in high school, right? Like,
right. I think that's a good thing for Trey. I think that's a very good thing for Trey. I think it adds a chip to his shoulder, and I think it shows him again like tangible improvement. Also shows you where the kid's at. I mean, I've talked to the kid plenty. I mean, this offseason, we did 2027 rankings, and a lot of fans were like, oh, well, and also On3 and Rob merged, so there was a merging of the rankings. So Trey slipped a bit for us, but he's still like the number 5 quarterback in the country. But, he's, I think, right in the 80s now in terms of total ranking. I've already talked to Trey. I talked to Trey before that because I kind of knew what was coming. And I talked to him afterwards, and on both sides of it, the conversation was, well, yeah, I've got to win more. I know what the deal is. I have to win. I have to show I can win more. I think there's an honest conversation there about kind of what he needs to do on the field this fall and all of that. But he knows where he stands. And he can be honest with himself and he can be honest with the situation. So yeah, I'm excited to see how Trey attacks, this fall after some of the setbacks. But in general, yeah, I think it's good, especially at the quarterback position. I think one experience and two struggles does make the quarterback. And, I think there's a lot of speculation right now on what Arch Manning is going to do after this year. There's stats out there, and the Manning family is very, very serious about the stats. In general, I think a lot of these top quarterbacks that have NFL pedigree are serious about these statistics, about the benefits of starting 2+ seasons at the college level, like having that starting experience, playing those games, doing all those things. We're seeing the downside of it with Anthony Richardson right now having lost a job. One, I'm just in general anecdotally saying, I do think unless it's like the Colts or the Saints at the very top of the draft, I think Arch is coming back for 26. But in general, I think all of these guys, the guys in college football right now, I think DJ would tell you his struggles came in high school. I mean, I straight up saw DJ his first 2 years of high school kind of work through things. I distinctly remember this 7-on-7 state 7-on-7 tournament in Texas the summer between his sophomore and junior year. And he was going up against Austin Novosad, who's up at Oregon right now, battling Dante Moore for the starting job up there. And Novosad's a year older. Novosad is like, kind of on the rise. And we're like, this is the opportunity to watch a rising quarterback in Lagway. And Novosad who's really starting to rise and put his name on some radars. And I thought Novosad performed exceptionally. And with Lagway, it was like, oh man, like, okay, well, his feet look better, but what's going on with his upper body? And then there were certain drives where it's like, oh, well, his upper body looked better. What's going on there? We talked to him afterwards, and he said, yeah, so me and my trainer, we've really been working on sharpening, my upper body mechanics. And so as a result, my lower body mechanics slip sometimes because I'm really kind of working on the upper body. And when I'm doing that, it's just there's a lot of mentally going on with him right now. And so I was like, oh, well, that justifies your performance this entire weekend. And I've essentially wrote all that whole weekend off to, I'm going to take the bright spots of this and I'm going to dump the bad parts of this because I know he's working on technique. And that factored into evaluation. And you saw all of it really come together as a senior. That's like the high school level of it, of like struggling early and then making the jump. Dylan didn't really have that in high school because he came into high school and kind of like, what was kind of having that journey at Burleson, then moved over to Chandler and kind of stepped in and had success there. And then the same thing at Buford. So like he was already further ahead than a lot of the high school quarterbacks at the same level. So for him, the adjustment wasn't going to happen till college. At a bigger picture, if you zoom out and you look at like, is this necessary for quarterbacks? I mean, we saw what Bo Nix did at Auburn and what happened at Oregon. We've seen quarterbacks, Jaden Daniels, the ups and downs at Arizona State and what that led to at LSU. I think a couple of these guys, I think Dante Moore, I think what you're going to see from him this fall and moving forward is a result of getting that year at UCLA to kind of work through kind of some of the troubles he's had. And now, having an opportunity to sit, watch the film, get behind there. And I think compared to all of these guys, I think something we're still underestimating with Dylan is how cerebral he is. And again, when we talk about struggles, how much relative it is to other people, where others are still working technique, others are still working through minor things. For Dylan, it's like, okay, how can I process this like an NFL quarterback as a freshman in college? Like that's the difference.
Yeah, it's just fascinating. And I apologize ahead of time for always looking at the like the mental and the emotional aspect. I can't state enough how I think it's important. If you want to give something, you have to have received it first, right? So if Dylan wants to impart wisdom on going through the struggle, you clearly have to go through it, right? And the self-awareness that he shows to be able to talk about what he went through in year one was something that you're not going to get when you move to high schools within a year. And then you go from Chandler to Buford. Because if we're being 100% honest with ourselves, some of the reservations we had about Dylan was the fact it was presenting this perception, because I don't really know why each move happened, but it was, well, it must have been this, so he's doing this, or it must have been like this at this place, so he's going here now. And whether that's true or not, the key is that he's self-aware enough now to talk and pinpoint what he went through, what it felt like, and what you have to do to not feel like that again. Right? Like I just, and the reason that resonates with me, because I don't know really any successful people over time that haven't been through that, where If I'm at Stewart and I'm really, really good coming out of Mount Carmel and I want to leave school, what am I drawing on that's going to keep me in school to not leave? Or if I'm Lawrence Pete and I'm struggling and I want to leave school, if I'm Tommy Frazier and I'm homesick and I want to leave school, what am I drawing on that keeps me like all these guys that are really, really good have gone through things where there's this like I can relate to, so I'm going to draw on in crunch time. And if I don't have it to relate to, what's the culture that's supporting me so I can buoy what I'm feeling off of? And clearly, for Dylan, it was the leaning on Coach Rhule and the openness of embracing struggles and failures, whether it's, hey, Dylan, I went through this in Carolina. I felt like this. Hey, year 2 at Baylor, I felt like to be able to be vulnerable and openly discuss it, it's got to be one of the primary reasons for growth if we're actually going to see it in his game. Are you tracking with me there, Tim?
Yes, 100%. And you brought up a good point about the high school situation and his background. Like, I do kind of wonder a little bit when you mentioned, kind of the struggles through like winter workouts and all of that. Yeah, nothing in high school for the most part is going to replicate those college workouts. But I wonder how much of it was struggles because when everyone else is kind of going through those boot camps or whatever, he's moving schools because that happened 3 times in high school. Like how many times was it where like, either he missed it or he was enrolling at the same time as or whatever. And it's also, again, he's the 5-star quarterback. By the time he got to Chandler and by the time he got to Buford, for better or worse, I do think Dylan's a competitor and was obviously in the mud with the guys. But like, I don't know, the coaching staff's like, hey, you're getting thrown into mat drills at Buford High School with everyone else. You know what I mean? I don't think that was necessarily happening.
Talking with Tim Verghese from Inside Nebraska. Tim, as we kind of shift gears here a little bit, obviously, I don't think Tory Pittman had committed yet by the time we talked to you last week. I think that happened right after we were on the air. But what I did want to ask is what you thought about the timing of that, how that went down in terms of what you expected his recruitment to look like versus him ending up committing reasonably early.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of expected him to. I mean, not kind of. I mean, I've kind of expected him to make those visits in the fall. Fully thought kind of he was. Um, I think Schaefer was on here early this week, and I think put it the right like just I kind of enjoyed the attention he was getting and was talking to schools and was kind of like excited about getting on the road and seeing some of these programs for the
I
first
thought the
time. So
timing was weird too.
yeah, so I think it says I think it says something that he was just bought in and he committed. I think it's I wrote it up and then kind of just I think the credit here goes to Addison Williams, who kind of took this recruitment over since he joined the staff and especially since June has been leading communication. Of course, Rhule's been involved, others have been involved, but I think this Nebraska getting over the top and getting him committed, I think does come down to the relationship with Addison Williams, the trust in Coach Rhule, and just kind of what the belief in what the program is building. So I'm excited to see kind of what he does this fall. I think he's going to just end up shutting things down, end up just at Nebraska a few times, come down with Kylan, his teammate, another Nebraska target, and get started peer recruiting. And I talked to Trey and Tory a little bit, and both those guys are already peer recruiting. So they're off to it. It's obviously a tremendous land for Nebraska. He's the highest rated in-state player and in-state commit for a reason. I love the tape. I've seen him in person in various settings. I've seen him in pads. I've seen him in 7-on-7. I've seen him in practice. So I've seen him in different settings. Really like the player. Really like the overall like general feel for the game. I do think I think there's some expectations on him as a junior. I do think he's going to have to be like, all right, well, you had some flashes as a sophomore. Now it's time to dominate like a top 20 player if you are a top 20 player. So I'm excited to see what he does on the field this fall.
Yeah, it's interesting. I want to fast forward just a smidge because it's right around the corner to Cincinnati and Thursday. I spoke yesterday in Nebraska City. I think the second question I got, Tim, was one in which we've been talking about almost all off season, and it's a legit one, right? I worry about the run game. Can we stop the run? When you look at a opponent previews and you're looking at Cincinnati, and I know you guys are just getting into your dives on site with the opponent previews. How much of, because remember the whole UNI thing in the second half of Colorado, and we talked about leaky yards, and there were these great debates on what it meant for the long haul in terms of Nebraska's tackling, and turns out it was a fairly decent precursor, which is not something I thought real time, because I'm looking at, well, shoot, man, you and I still average less than 3 yards a carry, and this is how much do you think of what we'll see Thursday night will be applicable long term to who Nebraska is defensively?
I think the closer we get to the game, I really kind of did a deep dive yesterday, or deep-ish dive. I'm really going to get into it over the weekend, but kind of a deep dive on them over the weekend or yesterday, and specifically with the offense. I think there's some questions on the line. I think that this is a unit that, compared to last year, they had some continuity. They no longer have that continuity. They spend in the portal. They feel generally good about one big portal addition, and so. I think their line's a bit of a question. So I think both sides kind of enter that game with that offensive line, defensive line question. So, I think, it's an opportunity for Nebraska, because I do think the combination of Keona, Riley Van Poppel, Elijah Judy, Cam Leonard probably has a little more experience than Cincinnati's defensive line altogether. Can that come together, and are they good enough to kind of penetrate that backfield consistently, and maybe push that line of scrimmage back a little bit. But I do think, regardless of who's blocking up front, I do think this team's going to get challenged from a tackling perspective by the two backs they have, Tubby Walker and Evan Pryor. I think Walker's obviously a big bruiser back, and Pryor's more like the home run hitter. And I think those two guys are, I mean, Tawee started his career at Oklahoma. Pryor started his career at Ohio State. These are former Power 4 guys. These are guys that, Nebraska may see different versions of, but these are the type of players Nebraska is going to have to be ready to tackle down the line. I see this game and I say, okay, if Nebraska can limit Pryor and limit limit Walker, limit Pryor to under 3 yards a carry, I feel a little better about what they may be able to do against Jordan Marshall and Justice Haynes against a better offensive line in Michigan a few weeks down the line.
Is Justice Haynes going to be healthy?
I don't know. I've got an eye on that. I still think Jordan Marshall's really good, and I still think that running back room, regardless, is going to be really good. Like, I do think, again, we talk a lot about Haynes because he's a transfer. Man, I really like Jordan Marshall. I really like what I saw from him last year. I think he might be the bell cow for them at points of this year, especially if Haynes it doesn't end up being healthy for a long stretch of time. But yeah, I think for me, that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at the how they're able to stop the specific backs. Maybe not necessarily how they adjust to the line, because as we all know, like, they're going to see better lines in Cincinnati's at points this season. I think USC's offensive line has a chance to be better. Iowa's is going to be better. Obviously Penn State, I think, is going to be better. And so, Michigan, of course, as well, is going to be better. So the best teams you play, you're going to face better offensive lines, but can you stop power forward type running backs? I think that this week will be a good opportunity to kind of see if they can. And, we talk a lot with this team about, the defensive line. I want to see if the culture remains. It sounds like it has, just of Tony White. Of what I loved about watching Tony White's defenses was the way the guys rallied to the ball. And I think this unit will do that. I think under John Butler, I think there's been an emphasis on that. But I want to make sure that that part of this defense has stayed intact.
No, I was talking to one of Nebraska's coaches yesterday, and I said I offered Tanner Mordecai as a comp for Sorsby. When you look at the way that Sorsby likes to play, his experience, the way that he can maneuver, escapability in the pocket, throwing, delivery, do you buy that comp, Tim?
Yeah, I mean,
I'm open to opinions.
No, like I see it. I get what you're. I'm trying to think if there was someone better, because I've been trying to rack my head around it. But you mentioned Mordecai, and it does kind of make, because I also think the Sorsby we saw at the start of last year and the Sorsby we saw at the end of last year are not the same. the exact same player, and I do think there were some struggles there by the end of the year. And I don't necessarily know for sure if, I mean, they've got solid weapons. Do they have better weapons? I mean, these are guys that, maybe have a little more to them from a profile standpoint, athletic standpoint. But there's not as much production there. So yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. Like, but last year when I saw like the especially the end of the year Sorsby, like some of the collapses and some of the like just kind of, it felt like he was in his head is the best way to kind of put it. Moments kind of came from, I think, the debilitating the situation around him. It wasn't like, hey, Adrian Martinez is, kind of mentally collapsing because the situation around him is also collapsing. But it was like, okay, well, he's clearly at this point kind of holding his team back because he's not willing to make the play. And so I think that's resolved now with, kind of additions to the line and some, at least reinforcements at receiver. But with Sorsby specifically, I think Mordecai is probably the solid comp of just the guy that, like, I mean, I think we could say this about Mordecai. They were game to game, you couldn't count on him as being the guy that can elevate a team to a win, but there were individual games where he absolutely could do that.
When you look at the running element from Sorsby, how much does that concern you? You talked a lot about the running backs, but I do think the running quarterback, as DB and I talked about yesterday, that messes with the math on your defensive fronts quite a bit. What's your level of concern there with Sorsby in terms of his ability to hurt? I mean, much like Mordecai did, how his ability to hurt Nebraska with his legs.
Yeah, it's just something they're going to have to account for. I trust, and I kind of think in practice, I think it's going to end up being Latif that's the scout and giving them the looks of what Sorsby maybe will give them. I think the fact that they have all these different quarterbacks with various skill sets is good and does help them, kind of prep for some of these games. I kind of, one thing for me, and I'm curious to see how y'all feel about this. I kind of think Nebraska is going to be aggressive attacking teams that do try QB runs and option games and things like that because of how multiple they want to be defensively. I think they have the attacking linebackers and the speed, both in the linebackers and in the third level of the secondary, to kind of stuff those angles and kind of eliminate kind of an option game. Like I kind of think that's how I see them attacking kind of option attacks and QB run game attacks is just, hey, we have Vincent Shavers, we have Javen Wright, we have Deshaun Singleton, we have Malcolm Hartzog and Marcus Buford back there. Like we kind of just trust those guys in our defensive front to kind of eliminate that. I don't know. That's just kind of how I see it. I kind of think you're just matching up your athletes on defense with the quarterback.
TV, you're always so businessy. I want you to have some fun here for a second, right? Because you're really good with evaluations. I kind of like your projections. Is there a player, and I don't know if it has to impact winning or losing, but is there a player you're excited to watch or see play that may be new or like maybe he's going to next level that you just want to get joy from seeing if they're what you thought they were, if they're what you thought they were, or that you just want to see how they've developed. Like if you just allow yourself to be a fan for a second, who's somebody you're excited about watching on Thursday that you may not have a huge Rolodex on?
Yeah, the closer we get to it, I think it's Jameer Khan. Like I love scrappy little corners. I love scrappy little DBs. I love them. I love, like, when I was covering A&M, my favorite player to watch week to week was Tyreek Chappelle. This little corner, like 5'11" out of
Felipe
Philly.
Sparks.
Man, oh man, so scrappy. Like it was so yeah, and I think he's back for his senior year. He's kind of had some ups and downs since that year, but like I love the year he had when I was there. But yeah, I love scrappy little corners, and I love guys that want to hit, that love football, that play, and Khan's just like my kind of DB, so I'm excited to see him in action. I'm excited to see the secondary in general. I do think I do think Andrew Marshall is going to surprise some people and just his ability to hold up at the boundary and, another year of Sierre. I think sticking in the secondary, I think you can see where my head's at. I love secondary. It's my kind of my wheelhouse. The other one I'm excited to see just how much we get of him early this year, Rex Guthrie, because I think he's going to be that guy rotating in at Rover. And I think he has an opportunity to kind of really fulfill and really like emerge as like Like Nebraska is going to, I think I can just see a world where, down the line, as good as Deshaun Singleton is and as talented as he is and as many different things as he can do for a defense, for what Nebraska wants that rover position to be, I think there's a point this year where Nebraska is going to be pointing to Rex Guthrie film and being like, this is what we want out of this position.
How many young guys you think you see in that too deep?
Ooh, freshman, sophomore. I mean, I think it's going to be a lot. I mean, you just look at the roster, and 90 of these guys are sophomores or below, So I think it's going to be a good bit. But on the defensive side alone, I mean, I think we're going to see. I mean, Guthrie's a name we mentioned. Kahn's a name we mentioned. Who technically is going to be like a sophomore, but yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a lot of those guys. I think we could see. I mean, Amari Sanders is going to be in there. Caleb potentially in there. Like, yeah, Jeremiah Charles, I think is now an older guy technically, right? Wouldn't he be a junior, considered
Right.
an older guy?
Sophomore, I think, technically.
So the way that I've kind of dumbed it down is anybody that's older than Caleb is an old guy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just kind of because
No, that's fair.
different people have different designations, right?
Yeah.
Sophomore, redshirt, so I think anybody that's older than Caleb for me is an old guy.
Yeah.
When you got Donovan Jones too, we didn't mention Donovan Jones.
Right, Donovan, I think he's going to be in there. So, yeah, I think in the secondary, there's going to be a lot of young guys. I wouldn't be surprised if you see Dawson Merritt on that linebacker too deep. And then up front, you could see maybe a Cade on there, maybe as like the third. I don't know if they go 3 deep on the D line this year, but if they do, I think I wouldn't be surprised to see Cade on there. And yeah, I mean, offensively, you're going to see Cortez. You're going to see Jeremiah probably rotationally, maybe not super, super early, but you're going to see Quinn. And you're going to see, of course, Ja'Cory and the rest of that those young receivers, Keelan. So yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see kind of how many guys, how deep they go at Cincinnati. I don't have a prediction just yet. I know I'm not going to see y'all until next game. Like where I'm at, the way I'm leaning towards it as we get closer to it, I'm like, this could just look like Wisconsin again, where it's maybe a higher scoring affair, but Nebraska kind of pulls away late, or it's never really close, and the final score is like, hey, Nebraska's like, I could see it being something like 41-31 or 41-28, something like that.
So, Tim, you mentioned you're not going to see us again until after we've played a game. That means I need to get your win prediction from you today. I know that's everybody's favorite thing to do. Where are you thinking? What are we thinking about for win total?
I think I'm going to be safe. I think I'm going to be relatively safe. I think I'm going to say 8. I'm going to say 8 just because I don't want to give them the benefit of the doubt of potentially slipping up at some point along the way. There are a few games I see on the schedule where I'm like for one example, I've seen a lot of fall camp buzz about Nico, and I look at that roster and I see a roster that is improved from last year, and that's a team that did beat Nebraska last year. At the same time, I do see Deshaun Foster acting a little, over the top a little bit in fall camp. I don't know if y'all have seen the reports out of that. He's kind of like close things off to media, and like I never liked that from a coach.
We talked to what was our buddy from UCLA, Mike. And he's like, there were those little comments about what little we've gotten to see and kind of Foster's demeanor. And I watched his vibe on the Big Ten camp tour too. I think there's definitely something to that kind of locking it down mentality that UCLA's done. I don't know enough to know the why, right? But I'm with you on the vibe that it seems like it's been a little lockdowny.
It's been locked down, and yeah, I mean, there's been some positive buzz on where Nico's at and kind of what they think he can do. His fit in the offense. They have some weapons around him. Like I do think that receiver room is legit. They quietly added, I think his name Javian Thomas out of Cal, a back I like a good bit behind Jaden Ott last year. I think the defensive line, go look at who they've added there. They've got some depth and they have some talent. So they're going to be salty defensively. Like that's a game that I could see potentially being a trap game or a tight game for Nebraska. So I think 8's where I'm at just because I think there's an opportunity for some potential slip ups. But yeah, 9, potentially 10, isn't necessarily out of the question, but I think 8, 9, I think is a solid goal. And I think you should feel good about this team if they come out of this season with 8 or 9 wins, because it is all, again, you want that year 3 jump, but looking at this team, looking at the schedule, looking at what this team wants to be moving forward. I think this year is you take some lumps, you learn what it takes to win close games, and then next year is when you really kind of gun for a Big Ten championship, a playoff spot.
That's our guy, Tim Verghese, Inside Nebraska. Tim, appreciate the time as always. Appreciate the prediction as well. We'll talk to you next week.
Sounds great. Appreciate you guys.